Sundry things tendered unto such as complain at. They know not how they are not able to abide in holy thoughts of God and spiritual or heavenly things for their relief, instruction, and direction. Rules concerning stated spiritual meditation. Some will say, yea, on many occasions do say, that there is not anything in all their duty towards God wherein they are more at a loss than they are in this one, of fixing or exercising their thoughts or meditations on things heavenly or spiritual. They acknowledge it a duty. They see an excellency in it, with inexpressible usefulness, but although they often try and attempt it, they cannot attain to anything but what makes them ashamed both of it and themselves. Their minds they find are unsteady, apt to rove and wander, give entertainment unto other things, and not to abide on the object which they design their meditation towards. Their abilities are small, their invention barren, their memories frail, and their judgments to dispose of things in the right order weak and unable. They know not what to think on for the most part, and when they fix on anything they are immediately at a loss as to any progress, and so give over. Hence other thoughts or thoughts of other things take advantage to impose themselves on them. And what began in spiritual meditation ends in carnal vanity. On these considerations oftentimes they are discouraged to enter on the duty, oftentimes give it over so soon as it is begun, and are glad if they come off without being losers by their endeavors, which often befalls them. With respect unto other duties it is not so with them. Unto such as are really concerned in these things, unto whom their want and defect is a burden, who mourn under it, and desire to be freed from it, or refreshed in their conflict with it, I shall offer the things that ensue. First, that sense of the vanity of our minds which this consideration duly attended to will give us ought greatly to humble and abase our souls. Whence it is thus with us that we cannot abide in thoughts and meditation of things spiritual and heavenly? Is it because they are such things as we have no great concern in? It may be they are things worthless and unprofitable, so that it is to no purpose to spend our thoughts about them. The truth is, they alone are worthy, useful, and desirable. All other things in comparison of them are but loss and dung. Or is it because the faculties and powers of our souls were not originally suited unto the contemplation of them and delight in them? This also is otherwise. They were all given to us, all created of God for this end, all fitted with inclinations and power to abide with God in all things, without aversion or weariness. Nothing was so natural, easy, and pleasant to them as steadiness in the contemplation of God and His works. Because, therefore, of all this evil lies at our own door. All this, therefore, and all other evils come upon us by the entrance of sin. And therefore Solomon, in his inquiry after all the causes and effects of vanity, brings it under this head: Lo, this only have I found, that God made man upright, but they have sought out many inventions. Ecclesiastes 7 verse 29. For hereby our minds that were created in a state of blessed adherence to God were wholly turned off from Him, and not only so, but filled with enmity against Him. In a state that vanity which is prevalent in them is both their sin and their punishment, their sin, and a perpetual inclination unto things vain, foolish, sensual, and wicked. So the Apostle describes it at large in Ephesians 4 verses 17 and 19, and Titus 3 verse 3, and their punishment, and that, being turned off from the chiefest good wherein alone rest is to be found, they are filled with darkness, confusion, and disquietment, being like that troubled sea that cannot rest, whose waters cast up mire and dirt. By grace our minds are renewed, that is, changed and delivered from this frame. But they are so partially only. The principle of vanity is no longer predominant in us, to alienate us from the life of God or to keep us in enmity against Him. Those who are so renewed do not walk in the vanity of their minds as others do. Ephesians 4 verse 17. They go up and down in all their ways and occasions with a stream of vain thoughts in their minds, but the remainders of it are effectually operative in us, in all the actings of our mind towards God, affecting them with uncertainty and instability, as he who has received a great wound in any principal part of his body, though it may be so cured as that death shall not immediately ensue thereon. Yet it may make him go weak and lame all of his days, and hinder him in the exercise of all the powers of life. The vanity of our minds is so cured as to deliver us from spiritual death. But yet such a wound, such a weakness doth remain, as both weakens and hinders us in all the operations of spiritual life. And those who have made any progress in grace are sensible of their vanity as the greatest burden of their soul, and do groan after such a complete renovation of their minds as whereby they may be perfectly freed from it. This is that which they principally regard in that complaining desire in Romans 7 verse 24. O wretched man that I am, who shall deliver me from this body of death? Yes, they groan under a sense of it every day, nor is anything such a trouble unto them, observing how it defeats them in their designs to contemplate on heavenly things, how it frustrates their best resolutions to abide in the spiritual actings of faith and love, how they are imposed on by it with thoughts of things which either in themselves or in their consequences they most abhor. Nothing are they so afraid of, nothing is so grievous and burdensome to them, nothing do they more groan for deliverance from. When there is a war in any place, it behooves them that are concerned to have an eye in regard to all their enemies and their attempts against them. But if they are vigilant and diligent in their opposition to those that are without that visibly contend with them, and in the meantime neglect such as traitorously act within among themselves, betraying their counsels, and weakening their strength, they will be undoubtedly ruined. Wise men do first take care of what is within, as knowing if they are there betrayed, all they do against their open enemies is to no purpose. In a warfare when we are engaged, we have enemies of all sorts that openly and visibly in various temptations fight against our soul. These it is our duty to watch against, to conflict with, and to seek a conquest over. But it is this internal vanity of mind that endeavors in all things to betray us, to weaken us in all our graces, or to hinder their due operation, and to open the doors of our hearts to our cursed enemies. If our principal endeavor be not to discover, suppress, and destroy this traitor, we shall not succeed in our spiritual warfare. This, therefore, being the original cause of all that disability of mind, is to steadiness in holy thoughts and meditations, whereof you do complain. When you are affected therewith, turn to the consideration of that from whence it proceeds. Labor to be humble and great, and to walk humbly under a sense of the remainders of this vanity of mind, so some wholesome fruit may be taken from this bitter root, and meat may come out of the cedar. If when you cannot abide in holy thoughts of God in your relation to Him, you reflect on this cause of it, to your further humiliation and self-abasement, your good design and purpose are not lost. Let such an one say, begin to think of God, His love and grace in Christ Jesus, of my duty towards Him, and where now in a few minutes do I find myself? I am God unto the ends of the earth, and into things useless and earthly, or I am at such a loss as that I have no mind to proceed in the work wherein I was engaged. O wretched man that I am, what a curse enemy have I within me! I am ashamed of myself, weary of myself, I loathe myself. Who shall deliver me from this body of death? Such thoughts may be as useful to him as those which he first designed. True it is, we can never be freed absolutely from all the effects of this vanity and instability of mind in this world. Unchangeable cleaving unto God always, and all the powers and affections of our minds is reserved for heaven. But yet, great degrees may be attained in the conquest and expulsion of it, such as I fear few have experience of, yet all ought to labor after. If we apply ourselves as we ought to the increase of spiritual light and grace, if we labor diligently to abide and abound in thoughts of spiritual things, and that in love to them and delight in them, if we watch against the entertainment and approbation of such thoughts and things in our mind as whereby this vain frame is pleased and confirmed, there is, though not an absolute perfection, yet a blessed degree of heavenly mindedness to be attained, and therein the nearest approach unto glory that in this world we are capable of. If a man cannot attain an athletic constitution of health, or a strength like that of Samson, yet if he be wise, he will not omit the use of such means as may make him to be useful in the ordinary duties of life. And although we cannot attain perfection in this manner, which yet is our duty to be continually pressing after, yet, if we are wise, We'll be endeavoring such a cure of this spiritual distemper as that we may be able to discharge all the duties of the life of God. But if men in all other things feed the vanity of their own minds, if they permit them to rove continually after things foolish, sensual, and earthly, if they willfully supply them with objects to that end, and labor not by all means for the mortification of this evil frame, in vain shall they desire or expect to bring them at any time on any occasion to be steady in the thoughts of heavenly things. If it be thus with any, as it is to be feared it is with many, it is their duty to mind the words of our Lord Jesus Christ in the first place. Make the tree good, and the fruit will be good, and not before. When the power of sanctifying grace has made the mind habitually spiritual and heavenly, thoughts of such things will be natural to it, and accompanied with delight, but they will not be so until the God of peace has sanctified us in our whole spirit, soul, and bodies, whereby we may be preserved blameless unto the coming of Jesus Christ. Secondly, be always sensible of your own insufficiency to raise in your minds or to manage spiritual thoughts or thoughts of things spiritual and heavenly, in a due manner. But in this case, men are apt to suppose that as they may, so they can think of what they please. Thoughts are their own, and therefore, be they of what sort they will, they need no assistance for them. They cannot think as they ought. They can do nothing at all, and nothing will convince them of their folly until they are burdened with an experience of the contrary, as unto spiritual things. But the advice given is expressly laid down by the Apostle in the instance of himself in 2 Corinthians 3, verse 5. Not that we are sufficient of ourselves to think anything as of ourselves, but our sufficiency is of God. He speaks principally of ministers of the gospel, and that of such as were most eminently furnished with spiritual gifts and graces, as he declares, verse 6, and if he be so with them, and that with respect unto the work and duties of their calling, how much more is it so with others who have not their graces nor their office? Therefore of men, without regard unto the present actual grace of God and the supplies of his Spirit, to suppose that they can of themselves exercise their minds in spiritual thoughts, and so only fret at themselves when they fall into disappointment, not knowing what is the matter with them, they will live in a lifeless, barren frame all their days. By the strength of their natural abilities, men may frame thoughts of God and heavenly things in their minds, according unto the knowledge they have of them. They may methodize them by rules of art and express them elegantly unto others. But even while they do so, they may be far enough from being spiritually minded. For there may be in their thoughts no actings of faith, love, or holy delight in God, or any grace at all. But such alone are the things which we inquire after. They are such only as wherein the graces of the Spirit are in their proper exercise. With respect unto them we have no sufficiency in ourselves. All our sufficiency must be of God. There is no truth among persons of light and knowledge, more generally granted in the notion of it than this, that of ourselves we can do nothing, and none more neglected in daily practice. Men profess they can do nothing of themselves, and yet go about their duties as if they could do all things. Thirdly, remember that I have not at present treated of solemn and stated meditation, concerning which other rules and instructions ought to be given. By solemn or stated meditation, I intend the thoughts of some subject spiritual and divine, with the fixing, forcing, and ordering of our thoughts about it, with a design to affect our own hearts and souls with a matter of it, or the things contained in it. By this design it is distinguished from the study of the Word, wherein our principal aim is to learn the truth or declare it to others, so also from prayer, whereof God himself is the immediate object. But in meditation, it is the affecting of our own hearts and minds with love, delight, and humiliation. At present I have only showed what it is to be spiritually minded, and that in this instance of our thoughts as they proceed from the habitual frame of our hearts and affections, or of what sort the constant course of our thoughts ought to be with respect unto all the occasions of the life of God. This person may be in a readiness for who are yet unskillful in and unable for stated meditation. For this is required thereunto such an exercise of her natural faculties and abilities as some, through their weakness and ignorance, are incapable of. But as unto what we have hitherto insisted on, it is not unattainable by any in whom is the spirit of faith and love, for it is but the frequent actings of them that I intend. Therefore do your hearts and affections lead you to many thoughts of God and spiritual things? Do they spring up in you as water in a well of living waters? Are you ready on all occasions to entertain such thoughts and to be conversant with them as opportunity offers itself? Do you labor to have in a readiness what is useful for you with respect unto temptations and duties? Is God in Christ and the things of the gospel the ordinary retreat of your souls? Though you should not be able to carry on an orderly stated meditation in your minds, yet you may be spiritually minded. A man may not have a capacity and ability to carry on a great trade of merchandise in the world, the knowledge of all sorts of commodities and seasons of the world and nations of it, with those contrivances and accounts which belong unto such trade, may be above his comprehension, and he may quickly ruin himself in undertaking such an employment. Yet may the abilities of this man serve him well enough to carry on a retail trade in a private shop, wherein perhaps he may thrive as well and get as good an estate as any of those whose greater capacities lead them forth unto more large and hazardous employments. So it may be with some in this case. The natural faculties of their minds are not sufficient to enable them unto stated meditation. They cannot cast things into that method and order which is required thereunto, nor frame the conceptions of their minds into words significant and expressive. Yet, as unto frequency of thoughts of God and a disposition of mind thereunto, they may thrive and be skillful beyond most others of greater natural abilities. Howbeit, because even stated meditation is a necessary duty, yea, the principal way whereby our spiritual thoughts do profitably act themselves, I shall have regard thereunto in the following directions. Therefore, fourthly, whatever principle of grace we have in our minds, we cannot attain to a ready exercise of it in a way of spiritual meditation, or otherwise, without great diligence, nor without great difficulty. It would show at the entrance of this discourse that there is a difference in this grace between the essence, substance, or reality of it, which we would not exclude men from under many failings or infirmities, and the useful degrees of it, wherein it has its principal exercise, as there is a difference in life natural in its actings in a weak, diseased, sickly body, and in that which is of a good constitution and in a vigorous health. Supposing the first, the reality of this grace be wrought in us or implanted in our minds by the Holy Ghost as a principal part of that new nature which is a workmanship of God, created in Christ Jesus unto good works, yet unto the growth and improvement of it is of all other graces our own diligent care, watchfulness, and spiritual striving in all holy duties are required. Unless the most fruitful ground be manured, it will not bring forth a useful crop. Let not anything to this frame of a spiritual mind wherein there is a disposition unto and a readiness for all holy thoughts of God, of Christ, of spiritual and heavenly things, at all times and on all occasions, will befall him and continue with him he knows not how. As good as it is for a poor man to expect to be rich in this world without industry, or for a weak man to be strong and healthy without food and exercise, is to be spiritually minded without an earnest endeavor after it. It may be inquired what is requisite thereunto, and we may name some of the things without which such a holy frame will not be attained. As, number 1, a continual watch is to be kept in and on the soul against the incursions of vain thoughts and imaginations, especially in such seasons wherein they are apt to obtain advantage. If they are allowed to make an inroad into the mind, if we accustom ourselves to give them entertainment, if they are wont to lodge within, in vain shall we hope or desire to be spiritually minded. Herein consists a principal part of that duty which our Savior so frequently, so emphatically charges on us all, namely, to watch. Mark 13, verse 37. Unless we keep a strict watch herein, we shall be betrayed into the hands of our spiritual enemies. For all such thoughts are but making provision for the flesh to fulfill its desires and the lusts thereof, however they may be disappointed as unto actual sin. This is the substance of the advice given us in charge, Proverbs 4, verse 23. Keep thy heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life. Number 2, careful avoidance of all societies and businesses of this life, which are apt, under various pretenses, to draw and seduce a mind unto an earthly or sensual frame. If men will venture on those things which they have found by experience, or may find by their observation, that they seduce and draw off their minds from a heavenly frame unto that which is contrary thereunto, and will not watch unto their avoidance, they will be filled with the fruit of their own ways. Indeed, the common converse of professors among themselves and others, walking, talking, and behaving themselves like other men, being as full of the world as the world is of itself, is lost the grace of being spiritually minded within, and staying the glory of profession without. The rule observed by David will manifest how carefully we ought to be herein. Psalm 39, verses 1 to 3. I said, I will take heed to my ways, that I sin not with my tongue. I will keep my mouth with a bridle, whilst the wicked is before me. I was dumb with silence, I held my peace even from good, and my sorrow was stirred. My heart was hot within me. While I was musing, the fire burned. Then spake I with my tongue, which place was spoken unto before. Number 3, a holy constraint put on the mind to abide in the duty of spiritual thoughts and meditations, pressing it continually with the consideration of their necessity and usefulness. The mind will be apt of itself to start aside from duties purely spiritual, through the mixture of the flesh abiding in it. The more inward and purely spiritual any duty is which has no outward advantages, the more prone will the mind be to decline from it. It will be so more from private prayer than public, more from meditation than prayer, and other things will be apt to draw it aside, by objects without and various stirrings of the affections within. A holy constraint is to be put upon it with a sudden rejection of what rises up to its diversion or disturbance. Therefore, we are to call in all constraining motives, such as the consideration of the love of Christ, 2 Corinthians 5, verse 14, to keep the mind steady unto its duty. Number 4, diligent use of means to furnish the soul with that light and knowledge of heavenly things which may administer continual matter of holy thoughts and meditations from within ourselves. This has been spoken unto at large before, and the want hereof is that which keeps many from the least proficiency in these duties, as a man may have some skill or ability for a trade, if he has no materials to work upon, he must sit still and let his trade alone, and so must men do as to the work of the holy meditation. Whatever be the ability of the natural faculties, their inventions or memories, if they are not furnished with knowledge of things spiritual and heavenly, which are the subject matter of such meditations, they must let their work alone. As the Apostle prays for the Colossians, that the word of Christ might dwell in them richly in all wisdom. Colossians 3, verse 16, that is, that they might abound in the knowledge of the mind of Christ, without which we shall be unfit for this duty. Number 5, unweariness in our conflict with Satan, who by various artifices and the injection of fiery darts labors continually to divert us from these duties. He is seldom or never wanting unto this occasion. He who is furnished in any measure with spiritual wisdom and understanding may find him more sensibly at work in his craft and opposition with respect to this duty than in any other way. When we stand thus before the Lord, he is always at our right hand to resist us, and oftentimes his strength is great. Hence, as was observed, oftentimes men design really to exercise themselves in holy thoughts, but end in vain imaginations, and rather take up with trifles than continue in this duty. Steadiness and the resistance of him on these occasions is one great part of our spiritual warfare, and we may know that he is at work by his engines and methods, for they consist in his suggestions of vain, foolish, or corrupt imaginations. When they begin to rise in our minds at such times as we would engage them in spiritual meditation, we may know assuredly from whence they are. Number 6, continual watchful care that no root of bitterness spring up and defile us, that no lust or corruption be predominant in us. When it is so, if persons in compliance with their convictions do endeavor sometimes to be exercised in these duties, They shall labor in the very fire, where all their endeavors will be immediately consumed. Number 7, mortification unto the world and our affections and desires, with moderation in our endeavors after the needful things of it, are also necessary hereunto. Yea, to that degree that without them no man can in any sense be said to be spiritually minded. For otherwise our affections cannot be so preserved under the power of grace as that spiritual things may be always savory unto us. Some, it may be, will say, that if all these things are required thereunto, it will take up a man's whole life and time to be spiritually minded. They hope they may attain it at an easier rate, not forego all other advantages and sweetnesses of life, which a strict observation of these things would cast them upon. I answer, that however it may prove a hard saying unto some, yet I must say it, and my heart would reproach me if I should not say, that if the principal part of our time be not spent about these things, whatever we suppose, we have indeed neither life nor peace. The first fruits of all were to be offered unto God, and in sacrifices he required the blood and the fat of the inwards. If the best be not his, he will have nothing. It is so as to our time. Tell me, I pray you, how can you spend your time and your lives better, or to better purpose? And I shall say, go on and prosper. I am sure some spend so much of their time so much worse as it is a shame to see it. Do you think you came into this world to spend your whole time and strength in your employments, your trades, your pleasures, unto the satisfaction of the wills of the flesh and of the mind? Have you time enough to eat, to drink, to sleep, to talk unprofitably, it may be corruptly, in all sorts of unnecessary societies, but have not enough to live unto God and the very essentials of that life which consists in these things? Alas, you came into the world under this law. It is appointed to men once to die, and after this to judgment. Hebrews 9, verse 27. In the end, while your life is here granted unto you, is that you may be prepared for that judgment. If this be neglected, if the principal part of your time be not improved with respect unto this end, you will fall under the sentence of it unto eternity. But men are apt to mistake in this manner. They may think that these things tend to take them off from their lawful employments and recreations, which they are generally afraid of, and unwilling to purchase any frame of mind at so dear a rate. They must suppose that to have men spiritually minded we would make them mopes, and to disregard all the lawful occasions of life. But let not any be mistaken. I am not upon a design that will be easily, or it may be honestly, defeated. Men are able to defend themselves in their callings and enjoyments, and to satisfy their consciences against any persuasions to the contrary. Yet, there is a season wherein we are obliged to part with all we have and to give up ourselves wholly to follow Christ in all things, Matthew 19, verse 21. And if we neglect or refuse it in that season, it is an evidence that we are hypocrites. And there was a time when superstition had so much power on the minds of men that multitudes were persuaded to forsake, to give up all their interest in relations, callings, goods, possessions, and betake themselves unto tedious pilgrimages, yea, hard service and war, to comply with that superstition. And it is not to the glory of our profession that we have so few instances of men's parting with all, and giving up themselves to heavenly retirement. But I am at present on no such design. I am not to take men out of their lawful earthly occasions, but to bring spiritual affections and thoughts into the management of the things mentioned will deprive you of no time you can lay a claim to, but sanctify it all. I confess he must be a great proficient in spirituality who dares venture on an absolute retirement, and he must be well satisfied that he is not called to a usefulness among men inconsistent therewith. To them it may prove a disadvantage. Yet this also is attainable if other circumstances do concur. Men, under the due exercise of grace and the improvement of it, may attain unto that fixedness and heavenly mindedness, dead unconcerned in all things here below, as to give themselves up entirely and continually to heavenly meditation, to a blessed advancement of all grace, and a near approach unto glory. And I would hope it was so with many of them in ancient times who renounced the world with all circumstances of relation, state, inheritances, and betook themselves into retirement and wildernesses, to abide always in divine contemplation. But afterwards, when multitudes whose minds were not so prepared by a real growth in all grace and mortification to the world as they were, betook themselves under the same pretenses to a monastical retirement, the devil, the world, sensual lust, superstition, and all manner of evils pursued them, found them out, possessed them, unto the unspeakable damage and scandal of religion. This, therefore, is not that which I invite the common sort of believers into. Let them that are able and free receive it. The generality of Christians have lawful callings, employments, and businesses which ordinarily they ought to abide in, that they also may live unto God in their occasions. They may do well to consider two things. Number one, industry in men's callings is a thing in itself very commendable. If in nothing else, it has an advantage herein, that it is a means to preserve men from those excesses in lust and riot which otherwise they are apt to run into. And if you consider the two sorts of men whereunto the generality of mankind are distributed, namely of them who are industrious in their affairs and those who spend their time, so far as they are able, in idleness and pleasure, the former sort are far more amiable and desirable, albeit it is capable of being greatly abused. Earthly mindedness, covetousness, devouring things holy as to times and seasons of duty, uselessness, and the like pernicious vices, do invade and possess the minds of men. There is no lawful calling that does absolutely exclude this grace of being spiritually minded in them that are engaged in it, nor any that does include it. Men may be in the meanest of lawful callings and be so, and men may be in the best and highest and not be spiritually minded. Consider the calling of the ministry. The work and duty of it calls on those that are employed in it to have their minds and thoughts conversant about spiritual and heavenly things. They are to study about them, to meditate on them, to commit them to memory, to speak out unto others. It will be said, surely such men must needs be spiritually minded. If they go no further than what is mentioned, I say, they must needs be so, as printers must needs be learned, who are continually conversant about letters. A man with great industry engages himself in these things, and yet his mind be most remote from being spiritual. The event doth declare it that it may be so, and the reason of it are manifest. It requires as much, if not more, watchfulness, more care, more humility, for a minister to be spiritually minded in the discharge of his calling, than for any other sort of men in theirs. And that is for other reasons so, because the commonness of the exercise of such thoughts, with their design upon others and their expression, will take off their power and efficacy, and he will have little benefit by his own ministry, who endeavors not in the first place and experience in his own heart of the power of the truth, which he teaches to others. And there is evidently as great a failing herein among us as among any sort of Christians, as every occasion of trial demonstrates. Number two, although industry in any honest calling be allowable, yet unless men labor to be spiritually minded in the exercise of that industry, they have neither life nor peace. Hereunto all the things before mentioned are necessary. I know not how any of them can be abated, yea, more is required than is expressed in them. If you burn this roll, another must be written, and many like things must be added unto it. And the objection from the expense of time and the observance of them is of no force. For a man may do as much work whilst he is spiritually minded as whilst he is carnal. Spiritual thoughts will no more hinder you in your callings than those that are vain and earthly, which all sorts of men can find leisure for in the midst of their employments. If you have filled a vessel with chaff, yet you may pour into it a great deal of water, which will be contained in the same space and vessel. And if it be necessary that you should take in much of the chaff of the world into your minds, yet are they capable of such measures of grace as shall preserve them sincere to God. Fifthly, this frame will never be preserved, nor the duties mentioned ever be performed in a due manner, unless we dedicate some part of our time peculiarly to them. I speak to them only concerning whom I suppose that they do daily set apart some portion of time unto holy duties, prayer and reading of the Word, and they find by experience that it succeeds well with them. For the most part, if they lose their seasons, they lose their duties, for some have complained that the urgency of business and multiplicity of occasions driving them at first from the fixed time of their duties has brought them into a course of neglecting duty itself. Therefore, it is our wisdom to set apart constantly some part of our time to the exercise of our thoughts about spiritual things in the way of meditation. And I shall close this discourse with some directions in this particular to them who complain of their disability for the discharge of this duty. Number 1. Choose and separate a fit time or season, a time of freedom from other occasions and diversions. And because it is our duty to redeem time with respect to holy duties, such a season may be the more useful the more the purchase of it stands us in. We are not at any time to serve God with what costs us nothing, nor with any time that comes within the same rule. If we will allow only the refuse of our time to this duty, when we have nothing else to do, and it may be through weariness of occasions or fit for nothing else, we are not to expect any great success in it. This is one pregnant reason why men are so cold and formal, so lifeless in spiritual duties, namely the times and seasons which they allot to them. When the body is wearied with the labor and occasions of the day, and it may be the mind and its natural faculties indisposed, even by the means of necessary refreshment, men think themselves meet to treat with God about the great concerns of His glory in their own souls. This is that which God condemns by His prophet in Malachi 1:8. If you offer the blind for sacrifice, is it not evil? And if you offer the lame and sick, is it not evil? Offer it now to your governor. Will he be pleased with you or accept your person? Both the law of nature and all the laws of holy institutions require that we should serve God with the best that we have, as all the fat of the inwards was to be offered in sacrifice. And shall we think to offer that time to God wherein we are unmeet to appear before an earthly ruler? Yet such, in my account, are the seasons, especially the evening seasons, that most men choose for the duties of their holy worship. And you may do well to consider beyond the day and time which He has taken to Himself by an everlasting law, how little of the choice of your time you have offered to God as a free will offering, that you may be excited to future diligence. If, therefore, you seriously intend this duty, choose the seasons for it wherein you are most fit, when even the natural vigor of your spirits is most free and active. Possibly some will say this may be such a time as when the occasions of the world call most earnestly for your attendance unto them. I say that is the season I would recommend, and if you can conquer your minds to redeem it for God at any rate, your endeavors in it will be prosperous. However, trust not to times that will offer themselves. Take them not up at a hazard. Let the time itself be a free will offering to God, taken from the top of the heap, or the choicest part of your useful time. Number 2. Preparation of mind unto a due reverence of God and spiritual things is required previously to this end. When we go about this duty, if we rush into thoughts of heavenly things without a due reverential preparation, we shall quickly find ourselves at a loss. See the rule in Ecclesiastes 5 verses 1 and 2. Grace, to serve God with reverence and godly fear, is required in all things wherein we have to do with Him, as in this duty we have an immediate and a special manner. Endeavor, therefore, in the first place, to get your hearts deeply affected with an awful reverence of God, and a holy regard to the heavenly nature of the things you would meditate upon. Hereby your minds will be composed, and the roots of other thoughts, be they vain or earthly, which are apt to arise and divert you from this duty, will be cast out. The principles of these contrary thoughts are like Jacob and Esau. They struggle in the same womb, and oftentimes Esau will come first forth, and for a while seem to carry the birthright. If various thoughts do conflict in our minds, some for this world and some for another, those for this world may carry it for a season. But where a due reverence of God is cast out, the bondwoman and her children, the workings of the flesh and its vain thoughts and imaginations, the mind will be at liberty to exercise itself unto spiritual things. Number 3. Earnest desires after a renewed sense and relish of spiritual things are required hereunto. If we engage into this duty merely on a conviction of the necessity of it, or set ourselves about it because we think we ought to do so, and it will not be well done utterly to neglect it, we may not expect to be successful in it. But when the soul has at any time tasted that the Lord is gracious, when its meditations on Him have been sweet, when spiritual things have had a savor and relish in the mind and affections, and hereon it comes to this duty with earnest desires to have the like taste, the like experience, yea, to have them increase, then is it in the way of a hopeful progress. And this also will make us persevere in our endeavors to go through with and what we undertake. Namely, when we do know by former experience what it is to be attained by it, if we dig and search for it as for a treasure, if you shall think that the right discharge of this duty may be otherwise attained, if you suppose that it deserves not all this cost and charge about it, judge by what is past whether it will be not advisable to give it over and let it alone. As good lie quietly on the ground as continually attempt to rise and never once effect it. Remember how many successless attempts you have made upon it, and all have come to nothing, or that which is as bad as nothing. I cannot say that in this way you shall always succeed, but I fear you will never have success in this duty without such things as are of the same nature and use with it. When after this preparation you find yourselves yet perplexed and entangled, not able comfortably to persist in spiritual thoughts, unto your refreshment take these two directions for your relief. Number 1, cry, sigh to God for help and relief. Bewail the darkness, weakness, and instability of your mind so as to groan within yourselves for deliverance. And if your designed meditations do issue only in a renewed gracious sense of your own weakness and insufficiency, with application unto God for supplies of strength, they are by no means lost as unto a spiritual account. The thoughts of Hezekiah and his meditations did not seem to have any great order or consistency when he so expressed them, like a crane or a swallow. So did I chatter, I did mourn as a dove, mine eyes fail with looking upward. O Lord, I am oppressed. Undertake for me, Isaiah 38:14. When the soul labors sincerely for communion with God, but sinks into broken, confused thoughts under the weight of its own weakness, yet if he look to God for relief, his chattering and mourning will be accepted with God and unprofitable unto himself. Number 2, supply the brokenness of your thoughts with ejaculatory prayers, according as either the manner of them or your defect in the management of them requires. So was it with Hezekiah in the instance before mentioned. When his own meditations were weak and broken, he cries out in the midst of them, O Lord, I am oppressed, undertake for me. And meditation is properly a mixture of spiritual apprehension of God and heavenly things and the thoughts and conceptions of the mind, with desires and supplications thereon. It is good and profitable to have some special designed subject of meditation in our thoughts. I have at large declared before what things are the proper objects of the thoughts of them that are spiritually minded, but they may be more peculiarly considered as a matter of designed meditation, and they may be taken out of some special spiritual experience that we have lately had, or some warnings we have received of God, or something wherewith we have been peculiarly affected in the reading or preaching of the Word, or what we find the present posture and frame of our minds and souls to require, or that which supplies all most frequently, the person and grace of our Lord Jesus Christ. If anything of this nature be peculiarly designed antecedently to this duty, and a season be sought for it with respect thereunto, the mind will be fixed and kept from wandering after a variety of subjects, wherein it is apt to lose itself and bring nothing to perfection. Lastly, be not discouraged with an apprehension that all you can attain unto is in the discharge of this duty is so little, so contemptible, is that it is to no purpose to persist in it, nor be worried with the difficulties you meet with in its performance. You have to do with him only in this manner who will not break the bruised reed nor quench the smoking flax, whose will it is that none should despise a day of small things, and, if there be, in this duty, a ready mind, it is accepted according to what a man has, and not according to what he is not. He that can bring into this treasury only the mites of broken desires and ejaculatory prayers, so they be his best, shall not come behind them who cast into it out of their greater abundance and ability and skill, to faint and give out, because we cannot rise unto such a height as we aim at, is a fruit of pride and unbelief. He who finds himself to gain nothing by continual endeavors after wholly fixed meditations, but only a living acting sense of his own foulness and unworthiness, is a sufficient gainer by all of his pains, cost, and charge. But ordinarily it shall not be so. Constancy in the duty will give ability for it. Those who conscientiously abide in its performance shall increase in light, wisdom, and experience, until they are able to manage it with great success. These few plain directions may possibly be of some use to the weaker sort of Christians, when they find a disability in themselves to the discharge of this duty, wherein those who are spiritually minded ought to be peculiarly exercised.